I recognize Dr. Misir, who is sitting next to me, who is the incoming president. And I think we're at his home. Wait, Sam. Don't get vexed with me, you know. Then I recognize Ms. Nada Ramkisoon, the outgoing president, who gave us a lovely address earlier. Sitting next to Ms. Ramkisoon is Ms. Rupchan, who's the deputy district governor, and assistant district governor. We spoke earlier. Now, I've been asked to speak for about 15 minutes. I may go a little longer, and it's not going to be the usual thing. I'm actually going to speak about housing, our housing policy. I'm delighted that the speaker before me was our elder and esteemed Brother Sharma, the brother engineer, because Brother Sharma laid down, to the end of his remarks, he laid down a very beautiful entree for me to make my remarks about housing. So I thank you, and I would make any connection so we could take off together. There's a four-way Rotary test that talks about, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? I don't have any problem with those four questions as interrogations. I am putting them tonight as a starting point, and we are now going to go deeper. What I'm about to give you is an analysis, a succinct analysis of our housing policy in the country. What is it? Where is it at? How is it being implemented? It's an important question for the nation. It's an important question in reflection of truth and being fair to all concerned. And I would reflect back, and I would bounce, and I would hold hands with Brother Sharma, the elder, esteemed engineer. What I'm giving you is an analysis, not an opinion. An analysis is a critical evaluation based on facts, scientific figures, and primary information. It's not the same thing as an opinion. I make the distinction not to be cute, because everybody has an opinion. Heaven knows I have hundreds of them about all kinds of things, about fashion, about religion, about politics, about who should have said this and who shouldn't have said that. What you're getting now is an analysis of our national housing policy, and it's an important question for us when we consider the amount of money that's been consumed, the amount of land that's been consumed, and the limited benefits. I would pause here to make a citation from the late, highly esteemed and beloved Dr. Pat Bishop. She didn't want to be called doctor, but Pat Bishop, Trinity Cross. And one of her signal sayings was, until all have crossed, none have crossed. And some of them, we have to carry them. I'll say it again. Until all have crossed, none have crossed. And some of them, we have to carry them. That's what Pat stood for. And it means a lot to me. Our housing policy in this country, the one I'm going to be speaking about, has been running for 16 calendar years. It was launched on the 18th of September 2002. The Minister of Housing at the time was Senator Danny Montano. And that housing policy was launched at the time that Mr. Patrick Manning, the late Mr. Patrick Manning, was our Prime Minister. And the housing policy, to put it quickly, because I'm being succinct, was highly ambitious. Mr. Manning proposed to build 100,000 new homes. They were described as affordable for low and middle income, 100,000 new homes in a decade. Highly ambitious. I worked it out. It's like 400 homes a week, 50 homes a day or something. It's crazy. It's just crazy. When you drill down into the numbers, which is why it's an analysis, it's not just an opinion. When you drill into the numbers, it's preposterous. It's like kicks. I know sprang along in the hospital, but it's like sprang along. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense when you drill into it. 100,000 houses in 10 years is 10,000 houses a year, right or wrong? 10,000 houses a year is what? Oh wait, that's 800 and something a month. Okay, how many days are there in a month? Okay, 20, 30, but then we have holidays and things, right? And Saturday and Sunday, right? You understand me? So we're talking about 40 houses a day is what Mr. Manning's published policy was going to build. And at that point, the country had more money than you knew what to do with, literally and metaphorically. And we still couldn't do it. And I'll give you the figures. The most interesting thing about the housing policy is this. So it was set up on this ambitious framework of 100,000 new homes, affordable, low and middle income, in a decade. It was ambitious, and it was set up on that framework. And once they got their heels into the ground and they started running, and they realized it really wasn't going to work, a few years later, and I started my critical analysis of the housing policy in 2004. So it's 15 years I'm doing this analysis. Once they realized that water was more than flour, and this is going to sound like science fiction, they made the housing policy disappear. The national housing policy is like the national land policy. If you look on any official website, you can't find it. If you go to town country planning, they will send you to lands and surveys. Lands and surveys will send you to the HDC. The HDC will send you by works, and it's a merry-go-round. Nobody has a copy of the policy. I have a copy on my website, afraraymond.net. I have a copy of the land policy, and I have a copy of the housing policy. Because in this system of irresponsibility, which stretches across both political parties, this is not an attack on Mr. Manning or Dr. Rowley or Mrs. Prasad Desessa in particular. In this system of irresponsibility we live in, we have to note these things. We have to bear witness to what really happened in the history of our country. And the policies have been made to disappear. And they've been made to disappear because they haven't been implemented. The most interesting thing about the policy, like a great many Trinidadian things, is how it looks like one thing but it's something else. Like a kind of system of masking, like old mask, carnival, and there are other things in culture. It's not just carnival, there are other aspects of our culture people mask. So when you go to the HDC's website, and you look at their criteria to apply for a house, one of the beautiful things on the website that warms your heart is you actually have a part of the website where they talk about non-discrimination. So an applicant for a house will not be discriminated against on the grounds of race. I think that's good. On the grounds of religious belief, I think that's good. On the grounds of political affiliation, I think that's very good. On the grounds of their gender or their sexuality, all of that is good. And in fact, in the United Nations universe, which is where we live in, all the boxes have been ticked. Race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, everything has been ticked. It's all is good. Except it's nonsense. The one reason somebody doesn't have a house is nothing to do with those things. All of that is for a show. The reason people don't have a house is because they have money. So the question of poverty, which is where Brother Sharma and I are going to make the connection. The question of poverty doesn't fit you in the list of things they won't discriminate against you for. The question of need, the fact that you don't have a deposit, the fact that you can't get a loan in the credit union, that doesn't matter, because we're not going to discriminate against you because you're East Indian or Chinese or Hindu or Buddhist or whatever. And as far as I'm concerned, those things are good. I said so. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient. So we have a housing policy and a process that ignores the reason people don't have housing. Because somebody with money, this being a capitalist society, let's talk frankly, somebody with money could buy a house. It doesn't matter any of those things on that list. They could go in that area and buy a house and like the blue house and the yellow house and buy the house they want. But that's not, we're not talking about people with money, we're talking about poor people. We have to design policies that will help poor people, which is where we make the connection with Mr. Sharma, who just received the estimable Paul Harris Fellowship. Excellent scholar. Bachelor's, master's, 2 Fulbright fellowships. 1? Oh, I thought so, okay. I didn't know that he's thinking about 2. I was wondering. Yeah. Yeah. Fulbright fellow. And listen to the point. What? Is that for me? Sorry. Yeah. What Mr. Sharma was telling us was that, in fact, he got his entire education through scholarships. I listened to him. He got his entire education through scholarships. He never had to pay for his entire education. Because A, He had the grades, the academic inclination to qualify for the scholarship, and he had the need. And he was able to get the scholarships and make his accomplishments. He described that his family grew up in poverty, and the scholarships was the avenue, the gateway, for him to make the progress so we could honor him tonight in the manner we did. This is where the housing question is. So what are we doing for those who can't pass? What are we doing for the ones we have to carry? Let's talk about what we're doing. In terms of numbers, we have to get into the numbers as an analysis. As I said, Mr. Manning's target was 100,000 new homes, affordable new homes in 10 years. The program has gone on for 16 years because it was in September of 2002 it was created. So we're not counting 2002. That would be unfair. We're counting from 3 and we're going up to the end of 18. That is 16 years in there. And they built 15,300 homes. I have the figures from the HEC. I'm not making up anything. 15,299 homes is what they built. That's a record of tragic failure. We spent $13 billion of our money. Our money. Our money. Public money. The treasury money, taxpayers' money, whatever word you want, our money. Supposedly to help the poorest people. And I want to say it did not. What is more, the new programs they have will do even less to help poor people. And I'm going to wax on my subject now. Because it's important. When I have these opportunities to speak, which I get from time to time when I get a kind invitation, it's important that I use these opportunities to conscientize the public who would not be aware of these details of what is being done in your name with your money, supposedly to help people who need help. And that's not what's happening. I have an analysis, which I would stop here and put a little sidebar to share with you. I have an analysis. I have a model I've constructed, a 5-level model of what the housing market in Trinidad and Tobago looks like. At the bottom of the market, you have homeless people. People who literally have nowhere to live. So they're sleeping under a tree tonight. They're sleeping on the pavement in Harris Promenade. Some of them are kind of technical homeless, so they're by a family and they don't like the family, but they're there because they don't have anybody else to stay, so it's a kind of technical homelessness, because they don't really have any rights. If they get one funny, they get put out. So there's that a kind of a technical homelessness there with homeless people, okay? The second level, coming up from the poorest level, because I start with the poorest people. The second level of the analysis is people who are permanent renters. There are some people whose circumstances is such, the number of children they have, the kind of job that they have, they could simply never afford to buy a house. Unless they win the lottery, one of those science fiction things you see on TV, somebody win the lottery and they win $20 million. But they never in reality, or they rob a bank, in reality they're never going to buy a house. They will always be rented. And all over the world, there's nothing disgraceful about it. All over the world, they are perfectly respectable people who have raised their family, they have fought for their country, they served as nurses, they served as public health workers, they drive a bus, and they rent it for the whole life and they come and they're dead. Okay? And they raise a family. Nothing disrespectful about it. It's what a certain level of person, that's all they can do. The level above that, the third level, is transitional renters. So you have a couple, they were at university, they were bright, they got married, they came out of university, both of them have good jobs. They know they're going to buy a place, but they're saving money for 3 or 4 years so they can get the deposit to buy the place, yes? But everybody knows, they know, and their whole family and all their friends know, that they're just renting for now until they could buy. Transitional renters. The fourth level is owner-occupiers, which I suspect most people in the audience are owner-occupiers. So where you live, you own the place. Okay? Simple. You live in so, and you own the place. You and your wife, or you and your husband, you own the place. And the last level, the level we never talk about when we're talking about housing policy, is multiple property owners. People who have so much money that they can own as many houses as they want. Rent as many places as they want. I mean, I have a partner and he died a couple of years ago from cancer. He had 29 houses. There are people so in Trinidad, with 29 and 39 houses and 42. I mean, this is my business at running Raymond and Pierce. I know what I'm telling you. That with 42 houses and things. It's part of the situation in the country. It's important to have a model to describe reality, because a model allows us to describe reality in terms that allows us to put a meaning to things. So now let's talk about the 15,299 homes. Now we have the model of how the whole housing market works. Let's talk about the homes. We got to understand something else about HDC and about the country. We need to, it's a long time when I was growing up, there was a show on TV, a kind of quiz called Know Your Country. Where you ask people about the year that this volcano exploded. Yeah, man. And who was the governor when this happened, and kind of history and local affairs and plants and animals and things. It was pretty interesting. Competitive and so between the secondary schools and so on. But in fact, most people don't know what is the actual figures for national income. You see, the whole discussion around class and money has gone to the point now, since the collapse of the Eastern Bloc, 1989, 30 years ago, Francis Fukuyama called it the end of history. And we're starting to see some signs of a particular kind of discourse that has dried up. So we no longer have a discussion. In fact, the whole question about poor people has really become abolished as a real discussion. As I said, the land policy, which was to serve poor people, vanished. The housing policy, vanished. The actual average household income in this country is about $9,000 a month. That's what the official statistics say. It's about $9,000 a month. I don't know how many of you knew that. Yet, the HDC, which has, as I explained to you all, in the housing policy and also in the HDC Act, Act number 21 of 2015, of 2005, I'm sorry, the HDC Act actually describes its role as to provide affordable housing for low and middle income families. To apply for an HDC house, there's an income limit of $25,000 for the household. Now, obviously, it makes no sense. My purpose tonight is to stop the nonsense and to bring out the essence of what we're talking about. Stop the nonsense and bring out the essence. It should never be $25,000. The maximum level to apply for an house in HDC, if you're applying and you're a couple, if your income is more than $10,000, you have to come off the list. Because if the average income in the country for the households is $9,000, but you have a waiting list. They keep talking about the waiting list and they want to build more houses to take people off the waiting list. And the waiting list is comprised of people up to $25,000. You're really dealing with nonsense. And this is not about Minister Dillon or Randall Mitchell or Dr. Moonilal or anybody in particular, all of them. All of them. None of them could come here and talk that with me. It's ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculous what's happening in the country. Now, of the 15,299 homes that they built, that they completed, only 3,171 were rented. What does that mean? The HCC will tell you, if you listen to things that they're talking, or the Minister of Housing is talking, he will tell you 85-90% of the people on the waiting list cannot afford a mortgage. Even with the 2% mortgage and the 100% mortgage and all these things they talk about, the special mortgages they created, the people on the list cannot afford a mortgage. And 75 to 80% of what you're building is for sale. Are you listening? This is happening in this country now, in broad daylight. Every time they go on TV and they talk and they cut a ribbon and they turn a sword, it's broad daylight. I'm not talking about anything in the night and anything subterfuge. This is on TV every night. Okay? And this is why, philosophically, we have to be careful what we wish for. Those of us who are possessed of a conscience and a perspective, sometimes you end up wishing for things, and then you have to look back and wonder, why did I wish for this or that? We live in a situation politically, not just Trinidad and Tobago, but it's Trinidad and Tobago I'm talking about now. We live in a situation politically in which people will take a point and argue it just for the sake of arguing. So you find party A will say this, the party A might be in government, and party B will take up a point and argue against that. And sometimes they listen to the argument and it really don't make any sense. And it doesn't matter whether it's PNM or UNC, you could switch them back and forth and find the same thing. We just get like, it's disgusting to believe that all these people went to university, that they're bright people. Okay? And as I said, earlier on in relation to something else, I made the point that the crisis facing the country is that what we have is this: the brightest people in the country who went to the best schools, who passed the hardest exams in the world, with flying colors too, seem to be unable or unwilling to separate stupidness from the right thing. That's what we face with. That's the leadership in the country. We are faced with that crisis. It's an existential crisis. It threatens our existence as conscientious people. And a consensus, when we see a consensus, we welcome it. When we see that the political people appear to have agreed on this or that, those of us who have a conscience, you feel warm, you feel, wait, they actually agreed on this? This is good. And you feel happy. Well, I want to tell you, I call it a cozy consensus. It's not always a healthy thing. Because on housing, there appears to me, as an analyst, as a specialist, housing is one of my specialisms. I built thousands of houses. I could tell you, it appears to me there's a consensus between the two political parties, what we call the so-called political divide. There's a consensus from both sides that what we want to do is to build houses to sell to people. We want to build the middle class. We don't want to get in any long discussion about rented houses and poor people. We don't want to get in that. I mean, now and again we throw the word affordable in, like a handful of spice. So you just throw the word affordable. Yes, we're keeping it affordable, and families will have an opportunity. But it can't be. Let me take you to it. So there was something about 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, when they announced this big project with a Chinese company, China Gesu Group Company, an engineering company, to build 5,000 new homes. The first phase of it is 204 homes in Port of Spain, East Dry River, and 235 homes at Lady Hills Avenue in San Fernando. $71.7 million US was the contract. A big smiling Faris Harawi was there, and Major Dillon was there, and Mr. Newman George, the Chinese guys were there. A whole media, Zafe. The average cost per unit, because I'm mathematical like that, you have to dig into the numbers to get meaning. The average cost per unit is 1.15 million. That's the construction cost. In Trinidad and Tobago, like how we abolish poverty, it's like how we've abolished land. We don't talk about land again. So our land is free. We never talk about it. Even the Minister of Housing, he don't talk about land. What he's talking about is the money that the contractor is supposed to earn. Now I know somebody asked me a question, I'm seeing you there, about how it all works. And I'm going to explain that in a little while when I get down to the end, about the PPP, how it works. The point being that each house, the way the arrangement works is like this. This is the new arrangements that we're doing, the new public-private partnerships, the HDC. And the new arrangement works like this. In the past, if the HDC wanted to build 200 houses here on a piece of land that belonged to the state, they would invite tenders and then give the contract to some contractor and pay the contractor to build the 200 houses here. And eventually they would sell some and rent some. Yeah? That was what happened in the past. They don't have any money now. So the new procedure is one in which they will make land available to contractors. So the first project was in Mount Hope, Mount Lambert with Emily Elias, Mahogany Court. They did the first phase of it 2 days ago. They finished the first phase, apartments. And what happened there is that the contractor, in fact, is designing, financing, and constructing. The contractor will raise money in the bank, design the complex to the HGC's specification, build the buildings. The HGC doesn't actually pay any money to the contractor. That is a new type of PPP. The HGC doesn't actually pay any money to the contractor. The HGC's equity is the land that they give. And as the units are sold, so you may buy a unit for 1.4 million. That money will go to the contractor to pay that person off. So the contractor will get repaid by the sales of the units. The problem with that model, it's all interesting in a kind of MBA kind of way. It's interesting because no public money is a thing, and it's all interesting. The first question is whether there's any money at risk. If the contractor fails to sell, will they swallow the loss? That's the first question. It's a tough question. It's got to be answered. Of course, they will tell you the contract is confidential, blah, blah, blah. And the second question is really the one about who are these houses for? If they're being built for sale, they're not for 90% of the people on the waiting list. They're not for the ones we have to carry. So we're still doing something. But what is our primary purpose? We're not doing that. Okay? So that's the cozy consensus I talk about. I want to close up by telling a little story. Because stories tend to cement a narrative like mine that has lots of numbers and so. Dr. Rowley was the Minister of Housing for a long time. Of course, he's now the Prime Minister. As I was saying to one of the colleagues earlier, he's somebody I know a long time. It's 40 years we know each other. Dr. Rowley published a book, his autobiography, when he came into office, called From Mason Hall to Whitehall. And that book is really interesting. I read it, it's really interesting. In the beginning of the book, he describes how he grew up. His mother, kind of single parent situation. His mother was in Trinidad, she was working in Trinidad, and he was raised by his grandparents in Tobago. So his mother used to come sometimes and see him, but she was working so much she couldn't really come to Tobago much. And his first time in Trinidad, because Rowley was born in 1949, his first time in Trinidad was when he was 8, so which would have been Christmas of 1957. It's important to just trace back this. I'm tracing this into dates and timeline and thing to make a point, okay? And he went to Trinidad when he was 8 for the first time to spend Christmas with his mom. He was happy. And where she was staying in East Dry River was really terrible. It was like a big house. They divided into 4 or 5 apartments. It was really unsanitary. Rain used to blow into the place. Awful. He gives a really graphic description of how awful it was. He saw where his mother was living. He's happy to be with her and to be loved and so. That description is around page 31 of the book. And then at page 35, you have a picture of Keith Rowley in 1970 with an afro. He wasn't bald yet. Hugging his mom. His mom's name was Vasi. Both of them have dashikis, and they're on the balcony of a house, a little house. And there's the mother's house at Coconut Drive, Morvan. Now, Dr. Rowley's mom was a cook at the breakfast shed. She had a very humble occupation. She didn't have any big job. She didn't have a big qualification. She was a hard-working woman. I'd get at 4 o'clock in the morning to start cooking and pass forward on the breakfast shed. But the point I am making, and it's not a personal point, I don't want to personalize anybody's business on a serious issue of public policy. The point I am making is that those houses at Coconut Drive, Morvan, were built, they were conceived in 66 and 67. They were built in 68 and 69 for Dr. Rowley to be standing on the balcony in 1970 with his mother, posing for that picture. They were conceived and built such that a woman working in the breakfast shed as a cook could afford one. I want you to listen to what I'm saying. 50 years have passed. We have had heaven knows how many oil booms. How much of education we have in this country, doctors, masters, PhDs, ACCAs, LLBs, all kinds of things, up and down the place. 2 universities. Heaven knows how many island scholars. And we do not have a housing policy. The amount of money we have in this country now, if you told anybody in 1968 that the country would have this amount of money now, they will say you're crazy. That's the amount of money we have in this country now. The cars we drive in, the houses we live in, and everything. Everything, at every level. The amount of shoes we have home, everything. Okay? Gain the whole world and lose your soul. 50 years later, where are we? It's a sobering point. Where are we 50 years later? And if the Minister of Housing or the Prime Minister, and it doesn't matter whether it's Prime Minister Rowley, because as I said, I'm not personalizing, it's going to be Prime Minister, Business, or whoever is coming next. If you cannot look me in the face and tell me, yes, we have a plan, and most of the houses we build in, women who work in the breakfast shed, or women who clean in the junior secondary, they can afford it. If you can't tell me that, you've lost your way. We have lost our way. If what you're telling me is you don't know, and it's $1 million for one, because the Chinese houses are 1.15 million. I did my research. I called TTMF, I asked them what's the cheapest mortgage, the best mortgage, for somebody who doesn't have any debt and everything. And the best mortgage for the prime candidate is $5,000 a month to borrow $1 million. I want you to listen to what I'm saying. The way the rules work with mortgages, to pay back to pay back $5,000 a month, you have to have a salary of $18,000 a month. $18,000 is more than 2 times the average. And you still have people in a jacket and tie walking around in this country talking about the building affordable housing. We have well and truly lost our way. I just had this discussion with you all this evening in an attempt to bring some, as I say, it's a different conversation. It's not about corruption, about any tendering and call a heart and who get what. And I could talk about those things for a week. But we need to bring a different type of, I'm going to call it corruption, whether it's intellectual corruption or ideological corruption. We've lost our way. We need to bring a different type of corruption, a different type of perspective into our minds from time to time to understand what is really happening in our country and what we need to do to change it around. I believe charity is important. These are my closing remarks for those of you wondering, when is he going to start? I believe charity is important. Charitable impulses enrich the human soul. They make us into better people. But I do believe where this matter is concerned, and of course charitable impulses are the root of progressive social policy. But I do believe where this is concerned, my bigger focus is on the public policy. I'm not that interested. I'm aware of it, and I support it. I will buy tickets and I will think it. I'm not that interested in Habitat. I'm not going to launch a big critique of what Habitat is doing and the houses of the president and they're painting them. I'm not doing that. We spent 16 years to build 15,299 houses. That is 900 and something houses a year. And as far as I'm concerned, 875 of them should have been for poor people. We need to get models that move us away from this $1 million thing. Everything is $1 million now. Okay, everything is $1 million. We have become hopeless to this question. We have a University of Trinidad and Tobago. They teach engineering there. We have a University of the West Indies. We have our professional institutions. We have the HCC. We need to organize some competitions, design competitions, with colleagues in the region. Let us see some models of houses that are 475, houses that are 450, and all of us know it's possible to build a house and start modestly. We all know that. I in the business, and a lot of you all would know that. The question is, what has trapped our public resources and the HDC and the housing ministry behind those high walls of $1 million plus? They're trapped up there. We need to rescue them. Thank you.